the first time in 4 months we haven't filled the house, so. So it's kind of unusual, but thank you all for coming. We'll try and get you out of here at a reasonable time, get everybody done. Please let the speakers speak, and then when they're done, if you all have any questions, you can ask their questions when they're finished. That way they kind of don't lose their train of thought. So, but I want to thank all the presenters for coming too. It's a big effort on their part to come and share this information with everybody. Like I say, I wish we had a few more people to share it with tonight. Like I say, last time they were sitting out in the hallway because there weren't enough people in here. But anyway, first is going to be Steve Heap, and he's going to talk about chickens. You're up, buddy.
One of the things that we've been concerned about with Round Valley Concerned Citizens is what happens if all of a sudden things change and we're not able to get things coming in. A lot of times people think that there will always be feed at the feed store. But if something happens, there isn't any feed. And people think, well, there always will be chickens at the feed store. But that may not happen. There may not always be chickens at the feed store. So what I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about tonight is how do you get chickens from chickens? A lot of people don't even realize that chickens basically raise their own, and that's possible to do. I brought an incubator tonight, just so you can see what an just a small incubator is like. But if there's no electricity, this incubator is not going to work. I have seen one incubator on the internet that's run by kerosene. And I guess it's really tricky to make things come out with kerosene. And an incubator run by kerosene. But what I'd like to talk about is raising your own. If you're going to have chickens, it would be nice to be able to continue to raise your own. I hope when they talk about bees, they'll talk about the same thing. Or goats, or rabbits. And with rabbits, I know that you just continually cycle through. But there's a trick to doing a few of these things with chickens, and a lot of people think, oh, well, all chickens naturally will just raise their own, and that's not true. Of the major breeds, right over here, of the standard major breeds, 2/3 of these breeds no longer will raise their own. It's been bred out of them because so many breeds have been incubated time after time after time after time for thousands of generations, and the instinct to set on an egg and hatch an egg has been literally bred out of the majority of chickens. There are certain breeds, however, that are more likely to have a hen who is broody. Do you know what a broody hen is? Okay, sounds like everybody knows what a broody hen is. It's a hen that wants to set on eggs. Does anybody know why a hen begins to set on eggs? Why does that happen?
Because they like baby chicks.
What?
Because they like baby chicks.
Not at all. Not at all. The reason why a hen sets on eggs is because she becomes too hot. She gets really hot, and she sits on the eggs that are cold, and that cools her down. And when those eggs get all warmed up on one side, she turns them over with her feet, so the cool side comes back up. And that goes on constantly. She's constantly rotating those eggs, trying to stay cool. She's trying to cool off. And that's why a hen sets on eggs whenever. In the process, she winds up incubating those eggs, and those eggs develop into chicks. A lot of people, they will start off with a pen, whatever, I've talked to the ladies in my office and a lot of people, oh yeah, I had a hen that raised chicks, but then the dogs got them, then the skunks got them, then this got them, then that got them. And most of the time, if you will build a pen, the right kind of a pen, you won't have that happen. You can keep all of that out, and you can keep your chickens and keep them alive. For all of you who are storing up food and other things for an emergency situation, you ever thought about storing up food for your animals? Whether it's rabbits, whether it's goats, whether it's chickens, whatever. Actually, down here at the feed store, they will sell you feed by the pallet, and it's cheaper if you want to buy it by the pallet. And I didn't know you could do that. They will do that right down here at the feed store. It takes, once a hen begins sitting on eggs, it takes about 21 days for those eggs to hatch out, for the development. It takes an egg, a chick, about 1 to 2 days to finally peck its way out of the shell. I brought this evening, when you get through, a couple of eggs. There's a big difference between these two eggs. They're both from my chickens, but there's a big difference. One of them is an egg that has a chick in it that's almost completely developed. And the other one is an egg that has never been set on before. And what you do is you take a light and shine it through the egg, and you can see the difference. When you get through, and when you get a chance, I want you to come up, and I have a little flashlight here, and you can shine it through these eggs, and you can see what it looks like. When an egg develops inside, there is an air pocket on the bigger end, not the pointed end, on the bigger end, there's an air pocket that develops right up here. And that air pocket is crucial because when the chick begins to hatch, he will start right there and peck around, and he has to peck out, so he pecks into that air pocket. If he pecks in the water in the sack that he's in, he'll drown. And that happens sometimes. You wonder, a chick will start out, whatever, and then it just dies, and you go, how come it died? He didn't hit the right spot, and he actually wound up drowning. Okay. So when you get a chance, come up here and you can look at those two eggs, whatever, and you can, that's called candling. Lots of times I'll have hens that will get broody and they'll begin to set on eggs. I have 2 hens right now sitting on eggs in my chicken house, and I also have 1 hen that just hatched out a bunch of eggs, and she has 3 chicks, and she didn't hatch out the other 2, so I took those 2 eggs, which are going to take a little bit longer to develop, and stuck them under one of the other hens. You can cheat. There's all kinds of ways to cheat. And I stuck them under the other hens. When they hatch out, when they finally hatch, at night I'm going to go down and take those chicks and stick them under the hen that has that originally started with her. Now, if you do that in the daytime, she will kill that chick because she will not claim it as her own. But if you do it at night and put that chick underneath that hen at night, by the time morning comes, that chick will have been in there all night, and he'll smell just like hers, and she'll take him. There's a lot of cute tricks that go along with this that you can use. But as these hens begin to be broody, let's go ahead and go on. You have to have a rooster that will work, whatever. You need about 1 rooster for every 10 hens. So go ahead and next slide. The roosters, not all roosters are totally fertile, and sometimes you can actually have a rooster, but he's not fertile, and he won't produce any chicks. So you gotta make sure that you usually have more than 1 around if you have very many chickens. Next slide. Okay, there's the 21 days. Next slide. Okay. You can take eggs from, once a hen becomes broody, I've had people put duck eggs underneath there, goose eggs underneath the hen, whatever. You can do whatever you want, whatever, but that hen most of the time will stay on top of that. And you can tell when a hen is broody because she will stay sitting on the eggs, and when you reach down close, she has a snarl and she'll peck at you. She won't jump off that set of eggs. If she's not setting, you reach down and she'll jump out of that box and take off. She won't stay in that box. She'll run off. But if that hen it begins to set on those eggs, then she will stay there. The good hens that stay there will, you can just sit there and they'll just continue to peck your hand till it's bloody if you're not careful, whatever, but they will stay on those eggs. A poor hen, poor setting hen, you do that whenever, and pretty soon she'll jump off and she'll be all fluffed off. I hate poor hens. I usually try and get rid of those hens because I don't want those hens. I want the hens that will stay on those chicks, those eggs, and last the entire 21 days so they hatch them out. And so you can do that. Next slide. When a hen is going along, you can either ride on the egg. I take my eggs because I have a whole bunch of laying boxes in my chicken pen, and I take my eggs once a hen begins to set on eggs. Those eggs I need to identify, because sometimes she'll hop off to get food and water, and another hen will hop on there and lay another egg right there, and you can't tell which ones are which. And so I will take a marking pen and go down and put a little ring around an egg. All her eggs have a little marking pen ring around them, so I know which ones are hers. So at the end of the day, when I'm collecting eggs and I lift her up, whatever, and look under there, and I got one that doesn't have a mark, that was laid today. I'll take that one. Okay. We have to be careful that you do that whenever. Otherwise, we get eggs, Chris, that are partway developed. She cracks them open and goes, oh!
It's a delicacy in some countries.
It's a delicacy in some countries, he says. Okay, there are some. You need to look here. Most of the bantam breeds are really. A bantam is just a smaller version of the standard breeds in most cases, and about half of the bantams are pretty likely to go broody and raise chicks. They raise their own chicks. There are some of them like the Seabrights and the Japanese bantams. Their eggs are infertile and they don't like to set, and they are a nightmare, and they are literally propagated by incubation 99% of the time. They just don't produce their own eggs. There are others. There's a ton of them here. There's probably, in the standard size, there's probably 3/4 of those breeds that are not very broody, and you will rarely get a hen that will ever set on an egg. Okay. Once the eggs begin to hatch out, you want to move her or keep her in a separate place from the rest of the chickens, because the rest of the chickens, if those chicks ever get by themselves, if they're with the other chickens, most of the times the other chickens will kill them. So you need to separate her for a little while with her chicks so she can protect them and just keep them warm and do everything she needs to do as the mother until they get a little bit bigger, until they develop enough feathers. That once they develop enough feathers, and that usually takes several weeks, but once they develop enough feathers, then you can take the hen out, and those chicks will be just fine. They'll just cluster together in the evening to stay warm. You can take those out. Let's go on to the next slide. It's real important that you have good nesting material, and when you choose eggs, this is something that I didn't realize, and I wondered why I lost so many chicks. They would start, and then they would hatch completely out, and then they would die. And this has happened to me lots of times over the years, and just recently I figured out you need a clean egg. Don't start with eggs that are kind of dirty, because as that chick pecks along that line, whenever if he pecks into manure or something else that's on that egg, they're liable. What they do is they get infections and then they die. And that's why so many chicks die as they wind up with infections. Next slide.
Here's the next slide.
Oh, let's try the next one. That's when they're marking them. They just put the date on them, whatever. And if you're collecting eggs and waiting to get enough eggs to be able to put them under a hen, then if you put them in a carton, you need to put the pointed end down, and then you have to, as you collect them, you have to turn them, tip them one way or the other every day. You have to do that, change it twice a day actually is what they recommend, tipping them whenever, because if you don't, the yolk membrane will come down and stick to the eggshell, and that will make the egg not develop, and you won't ever have an egg that develops if you
Tip,
put it underneath there.
tip and not invert, tip.
Just tip.
Got it.
Just one way or the other. Just so it changes and shifts. In fact, I forgot to bring in an incubator right there. They have an automatic egg rotator that just slowly turns one way and tips them one way, and then in 12 hours it'll tip them clear over the other way. 12 more hours it'll tip them, and it just goes back and forth and keeps tipping those eggs one way and the other as they're in an incubator. But one thing that's nice about a hen, if you've ever worked with an incubator, how many people have ever hatched eggs out of an incubator in here? 1, 2, 3. Keeping the humidity in there is a pain, and keeping the temperature just right all the time is a pain. Any of those things go wrong, and you won't have very many hatch, if any. Any of those things go wrong. But you put them under a mother hen and let nature take its course. She keeps them humid, she turns them over, perfect temperature. I mean, it is one of the miracles in life, whatever. But next slide after that one. Okay, let's go to the next one. I've actually gone beyond that. And that one. Okay. The hens, when a hen can get off the eggs for a little while, but it can't be off the eggs for very long. So the hen needs to get off, get something to eat and drink, and get back on, because those eggs can't chill. And every once in a while, I'll have something happen, and we have a whole set of eggs that are almost totally developed, and the hen got off and something happened, and she wasn't able to get back on. You lost those eggs whenever, and so even though they're almost fully developed, you lost them. Next slide. Okay. If you've ever seen, how many of you have actually watched a live chick hatch? Good, quite a few of you. It's amazing. It's just fun to watch and watch how something that's just that wet and ugly and whatever becomes that fluffy, cute little thing. That's all I have as far as the presentation, but I think that more people need to learn how to raise their own chicks. I've been doing it and raising, I haven't bought any chicks for years and years and years and years because I raised my own. And I have the great grandchildren of the original ones. So there's a lot of generations in there. Okay, is there any questions?
How many batches of chicks do you get a year, would you say?
Sometimes I'll have a hen that will set twice in a year. Most of the time in the wintertime they won't set.
So it's usually summer, fall?
Spring is when they really start wanting to do, and in summer. Occasionally you get one in the fall, whatever, but most of the time it's in the spring. But most of the time they'll set at least once, and a lot of times twice, and really rarely 3 times in a year.
Generally, what are you doing with the chicks as they grow up? Are you eating them, turning them into layers mostly, or what's your ratio? What do you do?
Most of the chickens that we raise, whenever we raise them for the eggs. And this is the size egg that we get out of banties, the banties that I've got. 2 of these makes a great big egg from the store. If you look at the eggs and crack this open and look at the yolk, because I let my chickens out, and they're kind of not completely free range, but mostly because if I let them out totally free range, everything in the whole world wants to eat my chickens. So I have to watch when I let them out and where I'm at, whatever. But two of these make a great big one, but the yolk on these is this orange, dark orange, whatever. And the kind you buy at the store is almost pale yellow. There's a difference. The nutrients packed into the yolk of this one are almost, according to the studies, 10 times the amount of nutrients in a free-range chicken as you get in the ones you buy at the store. 10 times. Any other questions? Yes.
You mentioned skunk and dog proofing your, do you happen to have any pictures of that?
I don't. When I have a chicken house and I built a run so that they can come out into that. But when I built the run, I put chicken wire underneath it and put my sand and stuff on top of that chicken wire. If something tries to dig under, they've got to get through that chicken wire, and that just stops them. I also, the chickens I have, which are the black-breasted red Old English game, they're on here, and the silver duck-wing Old English game. The ones I have, whenever they fly, something spooks them, they'll go 30 feet in the air.
Wow.
And then lots of times, if something spook them, I find them up on top of my shed, up there, whenever. I can tell something spooked them, whenever, because they won't normally fly up there. Or they'll fly out of the tree right there by my chicken pen, and I'll find them up in the tree. So I put chicken wire over the top, because mine can fly out.
Yes.
Something spooks them, they'll go right out over the top. Yes.
What do you do when, let's say you have a hen that's sitting on 10 eggs, and 8 of them are roosters?
Well, okay.
Is there a demand for roosters right now, or do
No.
you save any of your
The hatch rate is almost 50-50. You'll get 50 hens to 50, or 50% hens to 50% roosters, whenever. Very rarely is that, you get that. But you have to be careful, because a lot of these places will sell you chicks, they call them free run, which means they're not supposed to sex them, and decide what sex they are, and that's when you get 10 roosters and, or 8 roosters and 2 hens, for, you're supposed to have 10 chicks. Somebody has sexed them, because otherwise you get almost 50-50, and when I hatch out eggs, whatever, it's almost exactly 50-50. So you have to decide what you're going to do with the roosters. The roosters, you either have to eat them or undo them. And Chris doesn't like to eat these little ones, whatever, so I just undo the roosters that I don't eat. or that I
Define,
don't,
please
keep.
define undo.
No, you don't want them to define undo.
Okay, forget it, she'll tell me later. My other question is, roosters to
You do
hen
undo
ratio.
with a hatchet.
In your collection, rooster to hen ratio, what do you, like, how many to how many? Just a
You said
couple
that
for,
No,
for 50?
1 rooster to 10 hens.
Oh,
You
one
said
to
I do.
10, okay.
That's what they say.
And then my comment was, to anybody interested after the class, I'll tell you how I predator-proof my stuff in my
Okay.
chickens.
Very good.
I'll share that after class if you're interested. Not that it's
Okay.
perfect, but
All right, I'm done.
Thank you.